So we're going to look at multiplying, and we're going to be multiplying by 10, by 100, by 1,000, so basically multiples of 10. And there's lots of ways that this can be explained, so I'm going to go through a few simple ways that we can explain and illustrate really easy ways to multiply whole numbers by factors of 10. So we're going to get started. Now, when I look at these particular problems that I've put here, right, 75 times 10, 75 times 100, 75 times 1,000, it might be quite interesting if I was to add this one as well. So 75 times 1, now that is 75. This one here is 750. This one here is 7,500. And this one here, 75,000. And you might be able to notice something quite interesting. There seems to be a 0 added on to the product every time I add a 0 onto this factor here. And so you might also notice that if there's 1 0 here, there'll be 1 0 in the answer. If there's 2 zeros, there'll be 2 zeros. If there's 3 zeros, there'll be 3 zeros. So that's interesting because really it should be easy to multiply any whole number. So for example, I could go 86 times 100, and then I can just say, right, well, it's 86 and then these 2 zeros. Done. If I was to say 21 and I was to multiply that by 1,000, well, it's 21 and then these 3 zeros. And yeah, that's exactly how it works. It's a little bit interesting, I suppose, if we were to do this. So instead of 75, let's go with 750 times 10. Right. So it is 750, and I add the 0. Another way you could look at it is I'm going to multiply all the digits that aren't zeros. So it's going to be 75 by 1. Okay, that equals 75. And then I just add in however many zeros there are in the question. 1, 2, 1, 2. So for example, if I was to say, let's say 230, right, times 100. So I go 23 times 1 is 23, and I add 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3, and that would be the answer. So those will work really, really well. I can go 451 times, let's say, 100. Right? So 451 times 1 is 451. 2 zeros, there are no zeros here, so 2 zeros. And that's the answer right there. So that's the easiest way to just get an answer. But it probably is worth having a look at what actually is happening to give us these answers. Okay, so I'm going to use these diagrams here to help explain another way to think about multiplying by factors of 10 or 100 or 1,000. And we're going to use these period diagrams here. So these are the ones, and these are place values in here. So these are going to be the units. The units place. This is the tens of ones. This is the hundreds of ones. Here we have the same thing really. We've got units or ones, if you like. We've got tens and we've got hundreds. And because they're thousands, it's hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, and ones of thousands. But we don't usually say ones of thousands, we just say thousands. Okay, so now I'm going to put in a number. Let's say it was 75, okay, and it's correct place values each digit, so 75. And we multiply by 10. So what that actually means is I have to move the digits one space to the left. Okay, I got to go one space to the left with the digits. The digits move one space to the left because there's 1 0 in this factor here. So let's do that. So I go one space to the left, one space to the left. That puts those digits there. There's now an empty space in the units, but I can't leave it empty. I've got to put something in it, and it's going to be a 0. And you'll see that 75 times 10 is 750, which is what I end up here. We can do this a slightly different way. If I was to have 75 and not multiply by 10 but multiply by 100, there are now 2 zeros. That means these digits need to be moved to the left 2 spaces. So let's do that. So this must be moved 2 spaces to the left. 1, 2, because there are 2 zeros. Here we take this one, 2 zeros, so 2 spaces to the left, and we have the digits now in different areas and different place values, and fill in what we emptied with zeros. And you can see this is 7,000, it's in the thousands period, 7,500. And here we have the answer, 7,500 as well. And the same process would happen if we were looking at multiplying 75 by 1,000. If I was to do that, there are 3 zeros, so that's 3 places that I've got to move each digit. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Gets over to here. Have to do the same with the 5. 1, 2, 3. And fill in these spaces with zeros. And so what I've got here, I can say the number easily, 75,000, and that's all it is. And you can see here, that's exactly what we ended up with through this method. So that's another way that you can look at multiplying by factors of 10. Okay, and one further way I just want to illustrate, it's probably more old school. It's not all that common these days in schools to teach this method, but it's just as effective. If I had 75, right, times 10, you could look at it like this. Convert 75 to a decimal number, so 75.0. And why not put a couple of extra zeros for good luck? And I'm going to multiply by 10, which effectively means that the decimal point gets moved to the right. How many spaces will it have to jump? Well, that depends on how many zeros there are in this factor. Okay, so because there's only 1 0 in the number 10, the decimal point goes over 1 space. And so that becomes 750, and the decimal point would be here. And you can have all these zeros you like, it doesn't make any difference. The answer is 750, which is what we have here. Again, I can do the same kind of thing with this one, 75 times 100, so 75 times 100. So again, turn it into a decimal number, so 75.000, put in some decimals just to hold the place. There are 2 zeros there, so the decimal point has to travel 2 spaces, 1, 2, so it will end up here. So the answer becomes 7,500 or 7,500, which is what we have here. And for the last one, yep, we've got 75 times 1,000. There are 3 zeros, so 75.000. I'm going to take this decimal point and I'm going to move it 3 spaces. I'll move it 3 spaces because there are 3 zeros in 1,000. So that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. So the final answer becomes 75,000. And again, that's exactly what we've ended up with over here. So those are a few ways that you can think of to help you multiply by factors of 10, multiples of 10, I should say. So 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. So multiplying by multiples of 10 is quite easy. Depends how you want to do it. I still think the quickest and the easiest way to do these kinds of questions is this way. You get a number, let's say 56, you multiply it by 100, right? Multiply all the numbers that are not zeros, so 56 times 1 is 56. Add in all the zeros that are on the end of the numbers, so 0, 0. If I had another number, let's say, for example, I had 602. That's something slightly different. 602 times 10. I multiply 602 times 1, which is 602. How many digits are on the end of the numbers? Well, there's none here, and there's 1 here, so add that in, and that would be the answer. Okay? You don't just add zeros that are in the middle of a number. You can't do that. You can't just add 1, 2 zeros to the end. That's not quite right. Okay, that's it for now. If you want to see more, please go to www.learnersgrid.com.